What's up, guys? I'm Matt Risinger.
I'm Steve Baczek.
We're in Boston, and Steve, we got a killer project to show these guys, don't we?
This is a fun project.
There's a couple details here, guys, that I've never seen before, and we got some strategies that I think anybody who's in the building world is gonna find really interesting. Today's build show, a couple new strategies for insulation. Let's get going. All right, Steve, first off, we got this brown insulation on 24-inch on centers. I've never seen this before. What the heck is this?
Well, you have seen it, you just never saw it in this form because this was a tree. Yeah,
this is wood insulation?
This is all wood fiber. So it is a waste product from the forestry industry. They get a bunch of wood chips delivered to the factory. They grind it up, cut it all up. They add a few things to it, but
so it's
all
fluffy,
wood fiber.
But it's harder. It's not like our pink stuff that we're used to seeing.
Pretty dense stuff.
And these guys are cutting it like a big block. And you can see, like on this bay right here, Steve, you got one block, you've got a center block, and then you got another piece.
Yeah.
And this is made for a 24-inch on center 2x6 cavity. So this fits right into a 5.5-inch.
And you can use it for acoustical purposes, all the above. It's a great product. And I believe it is carbon plus.
How about that?
Because it's a waste product and it has the stored carbon in it, that it's actually plus on the carbon scale.
So then let's look at the stud bays. I'm going to walk over here with you, Steve. Behind this is a zip sheathing that we've used a bunch over the years. This is Zip R sheathing.
Yeah.
And I want to point out, Steve, that this is, what am I trying to say? This is an air permeable insulation.
Yes.
Right? So then the reason why this works really well in this stud bay is the zip is really airtight, not letting any airflow into this cavity. And this happens to be the insulated zip. What do we got going on here?
This is Zip R9, and you're correct. On the outside of the 1.5 inch of poly iso, which is the R9, we have our 7/16 OSB with our zip facer. So this is our primary air barrier, because that's going to tie into a detail we're going to talk about later.
Okay, so R9 on the outside, and then this bag has a label on it, I want to say. What was this, R22?
Yeah, I think it's R22 or R21. It's right into that range.
So we're R30ish or so on the wall. We also have continuous insulation. And something that I haven't seen before too, by the way, we're at Howell Custom Homes.
Howell Custom Building, yep.
And Brian is the site project manager builder here, who's a fab, I mean, I can't tell you enough about Brian. Brian told me about his lead-in detail. This is a built-in suspenders a little bit. Talk to me about what this is.
Yeah, so they don't like to put the sheathing on the wall when it's on the floor. They're framing it, but you still need to square up the wall. So he uses, this is a Simpson metal T-strap. So they square it up on the floor, they put that in to hold the wall square, stand it up, and then they sheath it.
So it's a thick gauge metal. It gets a kerf cut where it hits the stud. They nail it into the back of the stud with like a 16-penny nail, big thick nail, and that gives shear strength before the zip goes on. And then the zip is also nailed with a longer nail that does give shear strength. So it's kind of a double shear thing. But what I like about the insulation strategy here, good continuous R9, which is really important in a very cold climate like Boston. Then we've got this big fill on a 24-inch center, so there's less framing. But Steve, there's a detail here that I don't think many people have seen that you've done a bunch. And that's the ceiling. What do we got going on here? Yeah,
the ceiling. So the question becomes, when you trace this up the wall as the primary air barrier, we're going to get to the top plate, and we're in the one-story part of the house. So the question is, how do I connect this wall to the wall across the house with that sixth plane, which is the ceiling for an air barrier? So what we did here was, we used 18 inches of Majvest, which is a weather-resistant barrier from SIGA. We tape it to the outside of this, and they just drape it over the top plate.
Okay, so you got a double top plate that drapes to the outside that can be taped to the zip, and then it comes in and kind of flaps into the building.
Flaps in, and then they set all the roof trusses, they go do everything, so that flap is just hanging down.
Okay.
And then at some point, that flap gets taped off, and the SIGA comes into the wall and folds down also on that face. So I have this face here that's coming over the wall. The Myrex comes over and comes down and gets taped to that.
Gotcha.
So now It's basically that song, ankle bones connected to the weather resistant barriers connected to the Majvest is connected to the Myrex goes across and gets connected to the Majvest and to the wall.
And so this is an air tightness detail, and this, it looks like Majvest, they pronounce it Majvest, it's a Swiss company.
Yep.
But it's not air permeable. This is not the same stuff you'd see where they do kind of blown in insulation. It's an airtight. If you put it up against your face, you couldn't blow through it.
But it is a smart vapor retarder.
Okay, there you go.
So it allows moisture to migrate through, but it doesn't allow air. It's kind of like drywall is the same thing.
Right.
Drywall is a very effective air barrier. You can't blow through it, but it's pretty much vapor open.
Makes sense.
Right? So it's the same thing. And speaking about vapor, when you talked about the R9, you talked about it from an insulation perspective. It's actually a vapor control strategy, right? Because as moisture tries to migrate through the wall, it's looking for the coldest surface to condense on. And by using the Zip R9, it elevates the temperature of this surface.
Yep.
And the polyiso is impermeable, which means the moisture can't migrate any further.
Right.
So it gets stopped in its tracks, but it gets stopped in a warm place.
And it's not cold. It's not a cold condensing
It's not a cold
surface.
condensing surface.
Now, Brian, our smart builder here, has a couple details that I've never seen before on this.
I've never seen these either.
Okay, so he's got ceiling strapping, that little 1x3 that you see there that actually is doubled for some reason in this part of the house. Sometimes it's single. That's a pretty standard detail in New England. They strap their ceilings to get a flat ceiling. But here, it's holding that Majvest in place. And then he's putting another 2x4 on there. And the reason being, I'm assuming, Steve, is now he's got a channel to run all his wiring. There's no drilling.
There's no drilling. The electricians are happy. It's a full team effort. All of the lower profile recessed cans, you notice we have a piece of zip there because Brian was worried about the integrity of the Myrex when they go and they pull the box out and hook up the light to it and go to push it back in.
So that green zip is just protection.
It's
basically.
protection. It's a little shield to the Myrex.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
I like it.
The cool thing you alluded to with Brian, I will confess, I'll come out to the job just to walk around with Brian for an hour because there is no better education. I've learned so much. This is my 4th project with Brian, and every time we have a conversation, I learn something.
He's fabulous.
Yeah,
I love it.
it's,
Now, as we walk around the house, though, Steve, I have noticed that he's switched insulation strategies, at least in one part of the house. Let's walk this way. We're walking, I think, into a master bedroom, maybe?
Yeah, this is an away room. So this is the master bedroom. The wife wanted a room to call her own. And so this is her room.
And so here we've transitioned, though, not to Myrex anymore, but to a more kind of quote-unquote standard detail, which is closed cell foam.
Yeah, we filled that up with closed cell foam.
And so why did we make that change?
Yeah, so if you remember Carl, when we visited the Riverside house, Carl had a really great saying, the right choice should always win. And even though over there we're using the blown-in timber HP, when you get over here, she wanted a vaulted ceiling. You can see we don't have a whole lot of space.
Yeah.
So to try and make this a vented roof system with blown-in insulation like we have for strategy over there, it just wasn't working.
Right.
So now the question is, when Brian and I got together, it's like, okay, what do we do here?
Right.
We go to a hot roof. It's a small room, small space, but that's the right choice for a solution.
Yeah, makes sense. Now, Steve, I suspect there might be a couple details upstairs we might want to see.
There's details everywhere. There's details upstairs, downstairs, or on the outside.
We'll meet you upstairs.
Yeah, there's some pretty neat things happening up here, Matt. One of them, I think, is that you'll really appreciate very quickly is if we turn right and enter this space.
Okay, we got a door here.
We have a door here. We get access to the attic, but what I really want to show you is what's going on back here. So.
Okay, so we got SIGA Majvest ahead, up atop.
Yes.
And we don't have, it appears, any ductwork up there.
No, all the ductwork now is totally inside the conditioned space.
Really
so
smart.
This whole second floor, you can see the ducts go into the floor, and we use the 14-inch floor truss system below for all of our distribution of the second floor.
Love it. Love it. And this is interesting to see. You got a Mitsubishi heat pump. We're in a very cold climate, but yet we can use a heat pump.
Yes.
And in fact, Mitsubishi and several others make cold climate specific heat pumps to give full heat output.
Yes.
Down to like -5.
Hyperheat, I think it's called.
I'm also a big fan of these. Look at this giant filter here. These are great. April Air, they're not very expensive and they give good filtration. But Steve, I want to actually walk out this door because we, I suspect, have a view of the blown-in insulation area, right?
Yeah, this is
so come on around here,
cool
y'all.
area.
Check this out.
Let you walk by it.
So if you open this door now, this, by the way, this is a weather-stripped exterior door. There's your weather stripping on the door. And then when you look out here, now we can see the top side of that Majvest that we were just looking at downstairs. Walk me through that detail.
Yeah, so the Majvest, that's our air barrier across the ceiling. So in this case, it's just a membrane, but no air can move through it, but moisture can move through it freely. So it's a vented roof assembly. So we're checking off all the boxes of all of the control layers.
And if we kind of shine the flashlight far left here, I'm going to try and put it in pointer mode. Down there, see that black thing right there? That is a baffle that has it's a raised heel truss. So you've got a taller heel, that's the outside of the truss.
Yep.
And that baffle is going to provide a space for the air to flow up, but not to wind wash or blow away the insulation.
Right.
So great job on that detail. And then there's going to be a ridge vent, I suspect, that's installed at the very
there's a ridge
top
vent. There should be one up
of
there.
the roof as well. It's going to be a little hard to see with this flashlight, y'all, but there's a ridge vent. There you go. You can see it there. A ridge vent. And so you're also noticing there's no ductwork in here. There's also no electrical up here. The only thing we've got is a couple of vent pipes. And those vent pipes, when they penetrate that membrane, that SIGA Majvest, are taped. And then the electrical is all running below that we can see right here.
Yeah.
You know, all this electrical that I can actually touch on an 8-foot ceiling is running below that. And then this happens to be a scuttle hole into the attic above. And I believe Brian was telling me this is well insulated.
Yeah, it's like R45 or something there of rigid insulation. But he could put screws on there because there's never a need to, there's nothing up there.
All right, there's nothing.
Everything is here. The other thing I wanted to point out is notice here, this is built like our exterior wall, right? The Zip R9. And that goes all the way across because even though the attic is inside the roof, it is outside the conditioned area.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I forgot to mention, or maybe you said this, how much insulation will you put out there in that blown in or in this space above us to get blown in?
We're going to do 24 inches of timber fill. And, you know, right off the bat, when people hear that, they say, oh, 24 inches, that's like R86 or something. It's in the high 80s. It's up there. But the thing that you have to understand about blown in insulation, when insulation gets tested in the lab for resistance, the R value, it gets tested on all 6 sides being sealed. Because this is a vented attic system, it means that we don't have the capacity to seal it from the top. So we blow in the R80 knowing that, say, the top 20-ish% is kind of a sacrificial layer because that insulation is air permeable. Where that top, say, 8 inches or 6 inches, it's going to get some cool air penetrating it. So it's not going to do the job that, say, the lower third is doing. So we put it in there knowing that, okay, we're going to lose maybe 20% R15 of that. So we're really talking about the effective R values like R65-ish, R66.
Smart. I like it. I'm thinking, Steve, how about we go talk basement insulation details?
We can, but how about before we go down, we got one detail to look at.
All right, let's do it. What else we got up here?
Yeah, it's, I'll cut it short and say it's Brian being Brian. And if you take a quick left here,
okay,
we're going into one of the bedrooms. This happens to be the guest suite. That's the closet.
Yeah.
This is the bathroom. And when you go in, look up.
Oh, look at that. That is a bath fan with its own airtight box. Is that what I'm looking at?
Yeah, that's what. So when you have the Majvest there, one of the things that we're putting in here is we're putting in traditional fans. Well, the issue with that is it's a big old fan box and duct that has to go up past the level of the SIGA Majvest. So Brian's solution was to build a 5/8 zip box. It's fully air sealed. The fan was installed and the ductwork was run through and air sealed. And then this just gets installed as a unit now. The Majvest gets taped to the side of it, so that in fact becomes part of the air barrier.
Man, that's really smart. Gosh, Brian's a good builder.
He does a really good
I
job.
bet there's going to be a few more details downstairs.
Yeah, let's go check those
We'll
out.
see you all in the basement.
Matt, you got to check out this home theater down here. It's we have some pretty interesting details that I've never done before. That this will be the first time.
So multi-level down here in the basement, huh?
It is multi-level. We have a 2-foot well down here.
Wow.
That you know, this whole space is acoustically separated from the rest of the basement. And we could go in there, but I think if we go around the back corner, we'll be able to illustrate those details.
So acoustically separated, meaning you're not going to hear, or you're trying to reduce the amount of sound transmission from the home theater to the rooms above.
Yeah, in simplest forms, it's a box inside the box.
Okay, that makes sense. So how did you execute that, or what kind of crazy products?
Talking with Brian and coming up with the details, but also talking with the home theater audio automation guy. These are supposedly some details that he's used before.
Okay.
And very effective. But
so what are we looking at?
The very first thing is, notice there's an interior wall to the media room, and then there's basement walls. So there's 2 walls.
Right.
And they're separated
separation between those 2 walls.
Yeah.
Okay. So now these 2 walls aren't touching. The drywall hung here isn't on the same stud.
There's no conductive noise having the ability to travel, and we're going to have 2 layers of 5/8 on the inside, so that's going to help dampening that sound. And it also happens down here, and you can see up here we've acoustically separated this from the floor with that rigid insulation. So it's
with a very expensive product called some cheap foam rips.
Yeah,
I like it.
But it's basically just an isolation pad is how we're using it there.
Fascinating.
And so conceptually, the 4 wall, or these 2 walls, because the other 2 are outside, but these 2 walls are separated. The ceiling plane in there is acoustically separated from the floor plane above by rigid insulation. Smart. And the ceiling is separated from the wall. There's over there, you will look at the detail, but it has some rigid insulation that separates it. So every one of the planes in there are somewhat independent.
So back to your box within a box.
And it's a box within a box.
You're just keeping those 2 boxes from touching each other.
Yeah. So
really smart.
Hopefully we can crank up the music in there.
Looks like the spray foam guy's in process, but is this a pretty typical detail for you, Steve? This is probably closed cell foam.
It's a closed cell foam. We hold the frame off 2 inches so that we can get it in continuity. And the best part of this is, notice the closed cell foam doesn't come on the wood frame. Right?
Yeah.
When I was working with Joe, he said you always want to hold that off because you want to give that stud the ability to dry.
Makes sense. So 2 inches gives you plenty of insulation.
We get our 13
And then is
there.
the slab insulated underneath us?
The slab has 4 inches underneath, and it turns up 2 inches. You can see the 2 inches of EPS there. It's type 9. So this closed cell goes down and connects to that.
Oh, gotcha. Really
so we
smart.
get thermal continuity around the edge of the slab.
I like it. And then I'm suspecting you're going to spray your spray foam up into the band.
This goes up
area, right?
inside there. And if you notice, this is a little different than a lot of our projects, but these are top chord bearing trusses.
Oh, okay.
So that drops the floor inside the foundation, which yields a shorter dimension between the floor and the ground outside.
Got it.
So it takes 2 steps out of the 3-step system.
I like it. You know, you New England guys have this down.
The strapping
is just like ubiquitous. And I mean, I swear nobody in the South has ever done it. If I talk about it, people are like, what are you talking about? I've never seen that, but it makes so much sense.
Yeah.
So much so that you can see that there's wires right in that 3/4 spot, totally code legal, and look how much easier that is for the electrician. Make a nice straight run to run those all the way down.
If we don't put that in, the electricians, the plumbers, they all get nutty on us. Like, why isn't there strapping on here? But you know, not all of it. I don't know if any of them are over here. I think there's some over there, but I wanted to show you this because this is something I learned on this project. Because I was over here one day walking around and I saw these hoses and I'm like, what are they doing? Because there's no wire or anything.
Just an empty black hose.
Empty black hose. So when I was out, I caught up with Ross Trethewey and asked him, I said, hey, there's these black hoses that are coming out of the ductwork. He goes, oh yeah, it's a pneumatic. It's an air system that opens and closes the dampers.
A pneumatic damper system.
Pretty neat stuff.
That's pretty interesting.
And
you New England guys probably do this as a matter of course, but this is just smart right here. Look how you've framed this wall in a couple of inches, so that all your plumbing is absolutely within the.
Everything's inside the thermal layer.
Yeah, the insulation's well beyond that. Plenty of room to get all that, and it's within the warm section of the house.
Yeah, you know, we'll take a quick peek up here. Notice this thing is jam-packed.
Yeah, it is.
But there's a conversation with that when we jump around the other side we can have.
Okay.
Because I'll give credit to Brian. You've met Brian before. Brian is one of the best construction minds I know.
He's an amazing dude.
And what Brian said, after we're done designing Howell, we turn it over to their construction team, and then I start meeting with their construction team. Long before, you know, we actually start construction, we go through a bunch of details. And so Brian came back and said, you know, we had trusses over there, you had trusses over here. How about if we don't do trusses on this 7-foot span and we do 6-inch LSLs? So these are little mini beams.
But they only have like a 5 or 6
But
foot
they're like a 6-foot span by the time it's done.
Which gives
us 8 inches of access into the end of the trusses there.
Boy, that's really smart.
So now all of this ductwork, this can run down here. Notice this is still above the bottom cord of the trusses over there.
Super smart.
But we get all of this access. And then that gives a nice, you know, hangout room there with nothing below the trusses.
So good. It really shows the power of working with your architect as a builder ahead of time, selecting your builder, and then making sure that we have a good relationship between builder and architect, that we can talk about things before everything's finalized. Because this detail that Brian came up with, you know, Steve, it wasn't even on Steve's radar.
No.
Makes a lot of sense from a constructability standpoint, but also you get into this mechanical room and you go, oh yeah, of course, duh. I don't know that I would have thought of that one. Way to go, Brian.
No,
really smart.
And likewise to all the architects out there that are watching, it's like, go have these conversations with your builder.
Yes.
These are really smart guys and gals, and they've been doing it a long time.
Yep.
But
really smart.
how about the wall on the other side? I know this kind of stuff gets you excited.
Yeah, this is some serious power. Look at this gutter system to get to, what is a 400 amp service?
Yeah, these are for our Tesla batteries. We got 80 kW of battery storage.
Dang. So this is where, that stuff we saw in the garage, this is where it all comes from.
It's
this
all
is actually
gonna
a Tesla panel too,
Yes,
huh?
yes.
Backup gateway 1, backup gateway 2. That's interesting. So I don't know exactly what's happening with all the electronics behind the wall, but the idea is your giant solar system feeds the batteries, the power goes out, this then powers the house.
This takes it over, yeah. When
neat.
the 600 amps no longer are being supplied.
And so these are your standard panels.
These are just
over here,
standard
I'm
panels,
guessing.
yep.
And then I saw you had a Lutron panel for a
We have all
Lutron
our
system.
lighting controls and such.
And now talk me through this foundation height change. What's going on here?
We chose to do a crawl space here because it in the perception of this builder, it saved a lot of money.
Okay.
It's always one of those things that, like, some builders say, oh yeah, I'll save a bunch. Some guys will be like, oh, the excavator's already there.
Right.
But in their eyes, it saved money. So homeowner was happy. We brought it up. We just have to do, you know, a lay down unit instead of a stand up unit. And it gives a place for all of that stuff to go, get out of the way, and service above. And
so it's just a short basement is all it is.
It's a short basement.
Which is what a crawl space should be,
It's a short basement. And not that I want to plug my build show, but I did a really cool video because this wall is actually a retaining wall. The slab has a bunch of rebar in here, and the slab is pulling that wall back.
Gotcha.
Because there's dirt behind it. So go check out that video. I go into detail there.
If you don't know Steve Baczek already, architect in Boston, works all over the country, has been shooting the build show with us since the beginning, since 2020. He's got a ton of amazing information out there. And we joke about Big Red. It's a character in his show, but he's the only person I've ever seen who takes you to the job site, shows you what's happening, but then takes you back to the studio. So go check out Steve's videos.
Yeah.
Amazing, some great details here. Steve, I got to compliment you. Really beautiful, iconic New England style house. But what people don't know as they drive by, this is super high performance.
Yeah, it's a house that looks old, but it couldn't be any more new technology.
Super high performance.
And detailing.
And we didn't even mention it, but you've got some really high performance windows in this job too, right?
We do. These are all Schuco aluminum, thermally broken, triple glazed, center glass is R10.
It's pretty.
Yeah.
This has nothing to do with insulation, but strictly builder knowledge. What do I need to know about shingles on the outside of the house? What'd you use here and why?
Yeah, so shingles, these are Maybeck. Maybeck is a Canadian company. They're an Atlantic white cedar, and these are pre-finished. You can go into Sherwin-Williams, pick out any color you want,
Cool.
and they'll pretty much hand dip them.
That's awesome.
And ship them out to you.
And you got this behind the shingles too, don't you?
Yes, we always put a rain screen behind every one of our cladding systems. The beauty of this one is it's not in one direction. You can put it up and it's a blanket on the wall.
Yeah, cool product. Steve, super impressive, man. I'll put a link to How Custom Builders
Building Group.
How Custom Builders here in Boston in the description. Brian, what a stud. A super impressive job by these guys. And amazing architecture. By the way, you know, Steve is shooting videos every single week at his jobs literally around the country on thebuildshow.com. Go check out those videos and follow him at Steven Baczek Architect on Instagram. We'll put a link to both of those below. But I say we close it out, Steve.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely saw a lot.
Follow us on Facebook or Instagram. Otherwise, we'll see you next time on The Build Show.